Our briefing this week is with Juan Watterson, Home Affairs, and there's two I particularly want to look at here. First of all, police sickness levels. And you've deemed it necessary to actually bring out a press release to say that it's down, but I mean, you know, it's still like, what, 60% of all the sickness in the police is long-term, for instance, and that sort of thing. I mean, still quite big levels, or not?
Well, no, not big levels at all. In terms of the overall sickness rate, it's down at less than 2.75%. And I think perhaps in the past the police had a reputation for having quite a high sickness rate. That's certainly not the case. And if you can benchmark that to other public services, you'll find that actually that's very low. And certainly look across the public and private sector, I think that's very comparable. I think that's due to a mixture of good management, a mixture of the culture and values of the police. And it's also, if you look at things like, we've got the Investors in People gold standard, it says an awful lot about how we do things and the way we look after the people.
In the civil service, how does that look? How is it comparable with numbers there, for instance?
Well, those figures are published by the Office of Human Resources. I don't actually have them to compare, but I'll happily get them for you.
I mean, okay, are you happy then with the figures?
Yeah, certainly I am. If you do benchmark them across the public sector, it's gone from one of the highest to certainly now below the average. And if I appreciate there are differences in there, such as, you don't want nurses turning up to work if they've got a bug and things like that. But certainly in terms of considering the police are in a sort of potentially a high contact environment, we have had reductions in budgets, reductions in staff, which could lead to increased stress levels. We're actually not seeing that translated into sickness. And I think that's a really important point.
Well, that is interesting. I mean, you are slashing numbers. You are making people work longer for their pensions, that sort of thing. There'd be this assumption that you might be going the other way.
Yeah, and it isn't happening. So if you look at that in terms of an absence rate of 2.75%, that's low by a large organisation's terms.
While I've got you here, let's just talk about these numbers for the police and the fire brigade. They're both, the chiefs have been on to us and on camera to say, putting down the marker again, we cannot have any more cuts. Anything you can tell us on that? Are you going to be able to ring fence their numbers and their income?
Well, I've certainly said that I think that the new model of policing that we have does represent an irreducible minimum before we really start hurting service levels. What we're doing in terms of taking it from a service of 232 officers to 210 still represents a first-class service. It still represents a model that can be rooted in the neighbourhoods, which is really important to people. It's important to officers as well as the public that they have that connection, that we can preserve services, especially in areas that are really important at a national level, like forensics and financial crime. And I think if we try and go too much further in terms of cutting back on those numbers, you can't operate that sort of structure anymore. And I think the neighbourhood part of it is very important to people in the community, and we wouldn't want to walk away from that.
As other ministers have had to fall on their swords when things have gone wrong, if there was a massive incident here and whatever reason the police couldn't cope, would you feel you'd have to give up the job and pass it on to someone else?
It is my role to ensure that there is effective and efficient police force in the Isle of Man. That's a duty given by the Police Act 1993, and between myself and the Chief Constable, we'll work hard to make sure that will always be the case. And
it was mentioned obviously until the other day about trying to ring fence. What was your view on that?
Well, it's impossible to subvert the budget process, and of course, as soon as you start saying that this area is absolute sacrosanct, then you start rolling that out across the thing, and that you'll never get anything changed again. It's important that we continue to look at how services are delivered, because there's always room for looking again at whether we're delivering it the right way. Models change, the environment may change, so we have to continuously have a look at things like that. You might find that we can find a greater role, but there may be more cost to it. So there are a whole host of options there that you end up taking away by ring fencing, and that's the danger.
Are you giving these people again another figure to hit next year, another cut already? I mean, are you expecting more cuts?
Well, of course, next year's budget hasn't been discussed by council ministers yet. That'll be released in February of next year.
But would they expect to be hearing that you want more cuts?
Well, it's impossible to say. We've got a budget system there, a budget process that's part of the part of the landscape of the Manx political system, and that's something that is
Sure.
we're at the stage where departments are putting their submissions in now. They're discussed by Treasury, they then come to council ministers, and before that, and before it's gone to Tynwald in February, we can't really.
But both of them have said, have they not? Again, no more cuts.
Yeah, as I say, I think in terms of the delivery model that we've got, what we've got in both fire and police at the moment is an irreducible minimum if we're going to operate what we operate in the way that we operate it.
And you're comfortable with the way it's going?
Yes.